You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. So LSU had its spring game on Saturday. They wrapped up spring, and we spent some time on Monday going through the spring game and some of the takeaways, what Brian Kelly had to say about the quarterbacks, about Kyron Lacey, about John Emery. One of the things, though, that Brian Kelly said, that it's sort of not all sunshine and roses coming out of spring. And he did say, and you'll hear him use the phrase Achilles heel on this team. But I think sometimes coaches, when their team is really good and they know their team is really good, oftentimes you have to sort of fabricate some type of adversity. Best example recently is Kim Mulkey. How many times did we hear Kim Mulkey say this season? And listen, I'd listen to her on Tuesday mornings, or Tuesdays or Wednesdays, whatever day of the week she was on with Hester and T-Bob on Off the Bench, and I'd hear Kim Mulkey say every week, guys, we ain't won nothing yet. And, I don't know how we're doing it. We're so far ahead of schedule. And she would say, we've won games. We ain't won nothing yet. And she kept trying to downplay it. And then you win the national championship, right? Like they were good. Were they early? Sure. But I think we all understand the point. So if you're Brian Kelly right now, in year one, you win the West, you go to the SEC championship game, you beat Alabama, now you get all this talent back in your preseason top 10, and there's a lot of people that are going to be picking you like, what do you say to keep your team hungry and humble and all that stuff? Well, here was Brian Kelly's attempt at what is maybe the shortcoming of this team right now.
Well, I think we're getting closer to that. I think, clearly the area of concern for us is in depth. We're not at 85 scholarship players yet. We're below that line. So, 2 or 3 key injuries puts us in a very difficult position. We should be able in the SEC West to sustain some key injuries to key players. I don't believe we're at that point yet. If we, knock on wood, stay injury-free and continue to develop, we're going to be fine. But that's not where you want to be in this league. You have to, I think, go into a season and expect to lose some key players and still win this league. So I think that's probably our Achilles heel, if you will, is that we're still not at 85 scholarship players, and it's still going to require us to keep this team injury-free.
So your Achilles heel is not your quarterback, not your offensive line, not your receiver group, not your defensive line, not your special teams, which were atrocious a year ago, not your secondary. Your Achilles heel is the unknown. Your Achilles heel is, well, if we have some injuries, we might be in a pickle. Maybe. And look, hat tip Wilson Alexander. I saw he had this in the New Orleans Advocate. Starters last year missed a combined 41 games. 13 of those were Mason Smith with his ACL injury. You lost Josh Williams for a couple of games. B.J. Ojulari, they held out a couple of times just, to keep him healthy. Garrett Dellinger, had surgery, missed a few games. Armani Goodwin missed some time as well. So, yeah, you lost some guys a year ago, but by and large, you really did stay healthy as a team generally a year ago. If you were legitimately, though, looking at this team and saying, okay, where could they ill afford to sustain an injury because of depth? Like, your quarterback position, you're good. Jaden Daniels, fifth-year starter. Behind him is Garrett Nussmeier. A lot of people are excited about him. Running back, everybody returns. Josh Williams is back, getting Armani Goodwin back off of injury. Noah Cain has made tremendous progress this offseason. That's not even to consider John Emery. And then you bring in a couple of freshmen, you're good at running back. You return 6 of your top 7 offensive linemen. You've added Mason Lunsford, so you feel good about 7 guys. You'd love to have another one that you could feel good about. It's preferably a tackle, and maybe that ends up being Lance Hurd. So maybe you are really good on your offensive line. We know you got plenty of receivers. We have talked so much this offseason about what LSU has added on the defensive line. That's the spot last year where you were in a pickle. If knock on wood, if Mekhi Wingo would have gotten hurt last year, Jaquelin Roy, you were screwed. You were screwed. But those guys played a ton of football and stayed healthy. So you caught a break there. Now you've got those two guys. Well, not Roy, but you've got Mekhi Wingo. You get Mason Smith back off of injury. You got Jacoby and Guillory back. And then the 4 transfers that you added. You are loaded. That's not even consider your young guys like Bryce Langston or the guys that you're bringing in this class. So, man, you are Fitzgerald West, who they've kind of moved back and forth offensive, and he's at defensive tackle now. Like, you're loaded. You feel great about linebacker as well. You're moving Harold Perkins inside. You had Omar Spates. You brought in Swinson and Agofu at the end. My point, like, you are loaded. Cornerback. You added 4 cornerbacks. 4 transfers. That, like, on top of having LaTerrence Welch coming back and the guys coming in, like, you're the only spot where I would tell you, man, we even saw it manifest a little bit in spring this year. The spot would be safety. Because Greg Brooks was so good as your nickel last year. And when we all saw it, y'all, when Sage Ryan went in at nickel for Greg Brooks, you saw a regression there. And it makes sense. I mean, Greg Brooks was a 4th-year player. Sage Ryan was injured his whole freshman season, was playing really for the first time. Super talented athlete, has some room to grow. But I look at safety, and look, this spring, Major Burns missed a couple of weeks of spring. Greg Brooks missed a week. And you got a little thin back there. Matthew Langlois battled injuries his really for most of his career. So what they did in the spring game was you had Sage Ryan and Greg Brooks back at your safety spots. Well, if Greg Brooks has to step back and play safety, then that leaves you a little vulnerable at nickel where he's great. But if Greg Brooks can play nickel and if Major Burns and Sage Ryan can be back there at safety for you, and maybe a guy like Jordan Allen steps up this year, you got Ryan Yates, who's a freshman, guys that maybe you haven't counted on to this point would have to step up in a big way. Or maybe that's the most obvious spot where if you are Brian Kelly and you're looking at the transfer portal between now and June, you're looking at safety. Are there any guys around the country of experience playing safety at the Power 5 level that are in the transfer portal that makes sense? Add them. And then you supplement the one spot on your roster, I would say, that's one where I would go you're thin. But for the most part, like I could tell you tight end, y'all. I mean, yes, Mason Taylor we saw him have just a magnificent freshman season. But after Mason Taylor, you're talking about Jackson McGowan, who's a freshman, Mac Markway, who's a freshman, Kamorian Pimpton, who's a freshman. I mean, you've got bodies, but you added three freshmen after Mason Taylor. So you got a sophomore and 3 freshmen. You don't have great experience there. But as far as numbers, you are good there. You feel good about your room there. So I understand where Brian Kelly's coming from. And I understand that as a coach, you have to consider every potential pitfall of your team. And he is doing that. What I'm saying is there's really only one spot on this team where you're an injury away from being in a bad spot. And that's at safety. And you still got time to address that. A lot of reasons why this team is going to be hyped a lot between now and September. Get ready for it. I mean, you're going to start to hear that chorus build of people lauding this LSU team as a legitimate contender, and it's justified. They're just going to have to go out and do it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.